My name is Talia Kracauer, and today I'm going to present the story It Could Always Get Worse. This is one of my favorite stories of all time. It is the tale of a poor man who lives in a shtetl, which is a small Jewish village in Eastern Europe. His hut is small and extremely crowded, with his mother, his wife, and his 6 children all living together in one single room. When he can't take it anymore, he runs to the village rabbi for advice. And the rabbi gives him some unexpected advice, but in the end, he has a completely new perspective on his life. It's a story that teaches us to appreciate what we have. Jewish folklore often reminds us that though at times we may only see the negative parts of our lives, it's important to remember that our ancestors have been through countless hardships, and we are capable of withstanding more dire circumstances than we may realize. My parents used to read me this story before going to bed, putting on thick Yiddish accents to play the part of the man and the rabbi. So, "It could always get worse" became a proverb for me and my family, and one that I carried into my adult life. Though it may seem like a cynical way to imagine life always capable of worsening, I actually find that the mantra "it could always get worse" helps me through tough times and reminds me of what I do have to be grateful for. The Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, was just celebrated a few weeks ago, and I think that now more than ever is a perfect time to really take stock of what we have, especially if we are lucky enough to have a roof over our heads and food on our tables in this uncertain time, because after all, it could always get worse. Once upon a time, in a small village, a poor, unfortunate man lived with his mother, his wife, and his 6 children in a little one-room hut. Because they were so crowded, the man and his wife often argued. The children were noisy, and they fought. In winter, when the nights were long and the days were cold, life was especially hard. The hut was full of crying and quarreling. One day, when the poor, unfortunate man couldn't stand it any longer, he ran to the rabbi for advice. "Holy Rabbi," he cried, "things are in a bad way with me and getting worse. We are so poor that my mother, my wife, my 6 children, and I all live together in one small hut. We are too crowded and there is so much noise. Help me, Rabbi. I'll do whatever you say." The rabbi thought and pulled on his beard. At last he said, "Tell me, my poor man, do you have any animals, perhaps a chicken or 2? "Why, yes, I do have a few chickens, also a rooster and a goose." "Ah, fine," said the rabbi. "Now go home and take the chickens, the rooster, and the goose into your hut to live with you." "Yes, indeed, Rabbi," said the man, though he was a bit surprised. The poor, unfortunate man hurried home and took the chickens, the rooster, and the goose out of his shed and into the little hut. When some days or a week had gone by, life in the little hut was worse than before. Now, with the crying and the quarreling, with the clucking and the honking and the crowing, there were feathers in the soup. The poor man could hardly believe his misfortune. When he could stand it no longer, he ran back to the rabbi. "Holy Rabbi," he cried, "see what a misfortune has befallen me. Now with the crying and the quarreling, with the clucking and the honking and the crowing, there are feathers in the soup, Rabbi. It couldn't be worse. Help me, please." The rabbi listened and thought. At last he said, "Tell me, my poor man, is it possible that you have a goat?" "Why, yes, I do have an old goat," said the man, "but he is not worth much." "Excellent," said the rabbi. "Now go home and take the goat into your hut to live with you." "Oh, do you really mean it, Rabbi?" cried the man. Come now, my good man, and do as I say at once." The poor, unfortunate man trudged home and took the goat into his hut. When some days or a week had gone by, life in the hut was much worse than before. Now with the clucking and the quarreling and the crying and the honking, the goat went wild, pushing and butting everyone with his horns. The hut seemed smaller and the children grew bigger. At last, when he could stand it no longer, the poor unfortunate man ran to the rabbi. "Holy Rabbi," he screamed, "now the goat is running wild. It's worse than a nightmare." The rabbi listened and thought. At last he said, "Tell me, my poor man, is it possible that you have a cow? Young or old, doesn't matter." "Why, yes, Rabbi, I do have a cow, it's true," said the poor man fearfully. "Go home then," said the rabbi, "and take your cow into the hut." "Oh, surely not, Rabbi," cried the man. "Do it at once," said the rabbi. The poor unfortunate man trudged home with a heavy heart and took the cow into his hut. "Is the rabbi crazy?" he thought. When some days or a week had gone by, life in the little hut was very much worse than before. Everyone quarreled, even the chickens. The goat ran wild. The cow trampled everything. The poor man could hardly believe his misfortune. At last, when he couldn't stand it another minute, he returned to the rabbi. "Holy Rabbi," he shrieked, "help me, save me. The end of the world has come. The cow is trampling everything. There is no room even to breathe. It is worse than a nightmare." The rabbi listened and thought. At last he said, "Go home, my poor man, and let the animals out of your hut." I will, I'll do it right away," cried the man. The poor unfortunate man hurried home and let the cow, the goat, the chickens, the rooster, and the goose out of his hut. That night the man and his family slept peacefully. There was no clucking, no honking, no crowing. There was plenty of room to breathe. The very next day, the man ran back to the rabbi. "Holy Rabbi," he cried, "you've made life sweet for me. With just my family in the hut, it's so quiet, so roomy, so peaceful. What a pleasure." The end.